Europe, and we have exactly the same debate in Europe. So I'm Raphaël Bloch, I'm a French journalist. I've been in this space now for 8 years. I started my career at Reuters, and 2 years ago I co-founded The Big Whale, which is a European crypto media. We have 20,000 subscribers. And I'm very happy to be here with you in Singapore because this is the first time, and honestly there is so much energy in Singapore and also in Asia. Just before I went to Seoul, Tokyo and Hong Kong, and of course I talked a lot about staking and DeFi, so I'm very pleased, guys, to be once again on stage with you, so to talk about DeFi staking in Asia. As you know, things are improving, but still you have many challenges to tackle. So I would like maybe to start with you, Raza, and after you will introduce yourself at every presentation. So Raza, I know that the last weeks you've been in Asia. How you see the market? Is there a demand for DeFi and staking, and for what exactly?
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Raza, head of growth at Scroll. We're a layer 2 ZK rollup, scaling theory. I've been in Asia now for about 6 weeks. Traveled to Hong Kong, Tokyo, Seoul. Now here in Singapore. We'll be heading to Malaysia. I think that generally speaking, each region is slightly different. So if you look at Hong Kong, a lot of VCs, obviously in Shenzhen, you've got engineers. But generally speaking, I think that the retail DeFi appetite, for instance, in markets like Korea is very popular. Obviously, that's very well known. It's growing very slow in Japan, I would say. That's my taste of the market. And in other places like Malaysia, Philippines, it's growing. It's actually growing a lot, again, on the retail side of things. Vietnam is pretty tricky, I've heard, like in regulation-wise and the way they deal with it. But overall, I'm noticing that, you can't just I think it's very difficult to just classify Asia as Asia. But I think there's also South Asia, where there's the region of Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, very different user behavior. But overall, I think that the appetite for DeFi is growing.
Okay, and so for the others, for example, Jing, so Raza talked about more maybe retail markets. How you see things? Is more retail, corporate, more B2B thing?
Sure, mic test. Okay. I think it's an interesting question. I think you mentioned a few good points. But how I see DeFi, how I see crypto, it's to a certain extent almost a mirror image how traditional finance works, right? The DNA of a country doesn't change because you move from TradFi US dollars to USDT, right? It's a lot more about the macroeconomic, the demographic, and why people go to crypto, right? In many of these countries, people go to crypto, people go to stable coins largely because they don't trust their own currencies. They want to be able to hold something that they feel won't devalue, right? So whether it's from a retail perspective or whether it's from an institutional perspective, I think there are different narratives on what drives this, there are different use cases, and I think Raza made a very good point, which is different countries have really a different reason on why you go into this. If you talk about countries that are a lot more developing, definitely crypto is one of the assets where they feel like they can break through the glass ceiling, maybe they can hold their wealth. In more developed places, like maybe where we are here, for example, right, it could be an alternative asset that they hold. So I think it's a phase where not just the region but globally people are exploring this asset.
Okay, Rock on this.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Sorry.
It's
Hello.
Yeah, it's more quiet than yesterday night.
Yeah. My name's Rock. I'm one of the co-founders of Test. Oh yeah. I'm one of the co-founders of EtherFi. We're been here for about a week.
Take the good one and pass the bad one.
Yes, there we go. We're a Western company. Our headquarters are in Cayman Islands, and I live in Denver, Colorado, and we have office in Canada as well. People have been joking this week as I've had meetings that we're like a very Western company. You know, we're just not on the same time zones, or whether that's Telegram or like our social media, whatever it might be. So coming here and actually having these meetings and talking to people, I actually think that the Asian markets are much more sophisticated than the Western markets as far as DeFi goes. And the conversations that I'm having are like much more interesting and intriguing. In the West, there's, you know, maybe specifically the US, there's still like this resistance against crypto, which I think is actually so stupid of the US, because stable coins is one of the killer use cases of crypto, and the US dollar would just get like much more powerful if the US wasn't so dumb. But whatever, that is happening, and we can move on. So talking with people here, it's very refreshing to see like the vision and kind of where things are going. And then like Bitcoin BTC-Fi, I guess is what it's calling. It's like, that's like this whole new fascinating market that I think is evolving. So anyway, I have really enjoyed my week here, and the conversations are at a different level. Where in the US, I feel like I'm trying to educate what a blockchain is. So.
And so, Ivan, how do you explain that in Asia we see more traction for DeFi, as Bloch just explained?
Yeah, so actually I'm a local here in Singapore. So I think StakeStone is grown out of Asia, right? So we are actually trying to bring ourselves more into the US and Europe, while the others are trying to come to Asia. And I think we have a very close working relationship with Scroll as well, because we brought about, I think, more than 100,000 ETH, right, over to Scroll, I think, in our current campaign right now. So this is something that what we are trying to do is by, of course, leveraging the Scroll brand in the US to bring StakeStone being more known in the space. But of course, in Asia, there's still, I think a lot of family offices, a lot of LPs, a lot of institution investors are based here in Singapore. I think that's what we do see here in Singapore. And also, because we do a lot of regular meetings here in Singapore, so we know that a lot of founders and a lot of institutional players, they are also based here. So I think that also helps to drive the DeFi growth, right? Because with all these institutional money and whales that are based here in Asia, it actually helps to bring the whole staking narrative and DeFi narrative from Asia to across to back to the US and to Europe as well.
And so about staking, of course, it's on Ethereum, but recently we saw also things on Bitcoin. For those products, where you see the traction, guys? It's more neat thing still, or for Bitcoin it could be something in Asia?
I think it's a fascinating space. Someone's talked about it before, but it's trust, right? Like for so long, people didn't want to give up the custody of their Bitcoin. There seems to be a lot of Bitcoin's a proof of work blockchain. We're kind of roboting to make staking, and Jing's probably much better to explain this, but to make staking a reality. But people crave yield, and that's what we are seeing from this, right? Like yield is coming, and that's what it is. Like at the end of the day, it's not the securing of a blockchain or something like that the individual is thinking that they're like, hey, I'm gonna get X% back on this, and that's intriguing to me, so I'll give that to you. And so I think that I'm super curious to see how this space evolves. Trust is the biggest thing, and this is more trust than even the Ethereum one, because it's not a proof of stake blockchain. It's not that the crypto is actually not committed to the blockchain, and so there's actually these custody issues. There's a lot of human trust that kind of goes into it. But the fact that like the cat's kind of out of the bag at this point, I think like there's yield out there. I think people will continue to be attracted to it. Bitcoin's been a great asset, and I think people will continue to go into it. And it's just like we're seeing on I think on the staking side of Ethereum. That's why restaking was so hot. It's the yield of it, right? People aren't thinking, oh, I can secure more blockchains, right? Like the nerds like me in the industry are like, oh, cool, this is like a cheap way to build businesses. The whales are like, oh, cool, this is a way I can get 25% APY. So anyway, I think it all just comes back to yield, but there's actually like real yield being produced for these things instead of just like incentives of tokens or whatever it might be.
Yeah, so you talked about yield, but as you know, especially in Asia, it's also a matter of bank, the unbanked. So how do you see things about this? I mean, I don't think that yields is maybe the the biggest purpose and priority for many Asians. So how to find the right balance, especially for DeFi here in Asia?
Yeah, so my background is, I'm half Pakistani, my father's from Pakistan. January, first time in 16 years I visited, and Web3 is sort of taking off. Interestingly, what you said, I agree. It's in different parts of Asia. I would say that, so in Pakistan alone, there's 100 million DeFi. Think about it. That means that when someone needs travel insurance, they can't just go to an insurance office like this. Some of them can, most of them cannot. This goes even further for students who actually want to travel. They let's think about mainland China, think about also Southeast Asia, and so like Jing mentioned that crypto is taking off, particularly where there is a decreased trust in local authority, currency, and etc. And so they are seeing now opportunities that Brock is mentioning, is that for real yield on chain. However, the problem is that if this yield remains on chain, this value remains on chain, there's no way out. It just means that they have to go through other means.
And it's not easy to get in.
It's also not easy to get. Yeah. So I think that providing this credit card like EtherFi is doing right now is really a huge unlock for a lot of these people. Where now it makes sense that to hold assets, to have yield on chain, just leave it there. Or let's say from a user experience point of view, you just leave it there and you utilize it. And now all of a sudden, when they can go buy a plane ticket, and they can click travel insurance, they can have pet insurance, whatnot, right? So I think it's extremely interesting also to see how, I think, it came very late. I think this is what we have been doing all that time, but I think that there are different ways that have enabled us to do it right now in a more secure and scalable way.
Jing and Ilvan, about this?
Okay, so we just launched our SBDC product last night actually. So this is something
Congrats.
that we're moving into. Of course, definitely, I think, to be honest, right, whichever staking, restaking, our staking protocols out there, we are just really fighting 1% pie of the whole crypto market, or rather in general, the whole general population of the world. So I think there are a lot more to be done in this area where I think education will be one of the core things that we need to do more. I think a lot of people who hold BTC, of course, they are very skeptical. I think security is something that a lot of Asians that we speak to, Asian players that we speak to, they are very concerned about, right? Like you mentioned, yield is something, but I think they're more concerned about the security behind it. And this is something that I think we can do a lot more in terms of educating everyone with all the panelists here on staking and on DeFi growth as well.
Sure. I think the panel brought up a few interesting points, but how we see it is really a few folds, right? I'm going to sound like a broken recorder, given I've mentioned this many times and been on panels with many of you guys. I think that increasingly this space traditionally has always been a lot of retail, a lot of large whales and stuff, but as we progress and we institutionalize, a lot of the more traditional players are going to come in. Increasingly you see assets sitting in family offices, in ETFs, and at the end of the day, it's how do you get these players involved? How do you get them in? Rob mentioned about yield, right? At the end of the day, everyone comes in for a certain reason because they want a yield enhancement product. They want to do something better, right? But then crypto, Bitcoin in general it's layers of trust assumptions, and at each point, how do you get comfortable with it, right? The more trust assumptions you take, the more risk you take, you expect a higher return. And I think there's different levels for different users. So I think that's why it's a very, very nice environment, because the more risk you take, or the more calculated risk you take, the higher your returns are expected to be, right? And that's really how we see it. And then point number 2 is that I think we are at a very good and very interesting inflection point where, at least from the outside perspective, yield for the largest asset in this system, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's ETH, is starting to be interesting to them. How do they want to get it, right? And the goal is not really for us to see whether you win or I win. It's about how do we get this ecosystem to bring those guys in, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're targeting.
Yeah, so this is one thing we're really focused on. So, and Raza mentioned it. So EtherFi Cash is a credit card it's a Visa credit card that is completely on chain. So you bring assets into, it can be Bitcoin, it can be Ethereum, or it can be a stable, and you put it in your wallet, and you can spend, and you can borrow against it like a traditional credit card. We use it in Aave market, and so you as the user are never having to offboard or off-ramp, go into fiat and pay off your credit card bill. All of that is done on chain. We settle it with Visa like every day, but you get to stay on chain as a user. And so I think you talk about bringing more people in. Crypto is still really hard to use, right? Like, how do I deposit in there? I see this thing. It's like UI UX isn't great. So like we're trying to abstract all of that stuff, and so the user doesn't even know, right? They don't even know that they're interacting on a day-to-day basis. Like if you think about all the things you use on a day-to-day basis in traditional finance or commerce, everything that's behind the scenes and these large companies you've never heard of. Like that's the goal. Hopefully no one even knows about EtherFi or Scroll. All the assets are going to sit on Scroll, like and they have very fast transactions, which makes this like a really good thing for us. But hopefully the user never knows, right? They're just using a credit card and they're getting 3% cash back. That's all they know, right? And so that's how we bring the next wave of people into crypto, which as you were saying, it's like we are using such a small percentage of the global like economic market right now. So yeah.
And do you think that you will work, all of you, in the future, more tightly with the financial institutions? You saw the panel just before. They are really interested in crypto, but still they are way slower than you. So, because it's also a matter of trust, and as you know, people don't trust every time the financial system, and that's why they also so engaged in the crypto space. So do you think that the future is mixed with TradFi and DeFi, or only about DeFi?
I think it has to be both. The issue is crypto moves so fast that is a protocol to get up and get off the ground. You got to ship really quick. You got to find product market fit and kind of stay relevant. And traditional finance conversations just take longer to happen. So, but I think both have to happen in order for us to grow and create this like new market. I actually think both will exist.
Yeah, to add to that, I just think that inevitably the two will merge because we won't wait for TradFi to adopt, let's say, crypto, and we're growing the pie, so to say, onboarding, let's say, as slow as it might be and as painful as it might be right now. But we're onboarding users and we're doing a better job, like Rob mentioned, like abstracting it away. And at some point, DeFi will just be too big. It has to be regulated, and so that will happen, and that will come in. And I think that's going to be more. We're already seeing it. It's like you have chief digital asset officers, you have digital asset branches, and so side by side they are learning and growing, and side by side we are growing. Inevitably, the two will just merge. Where you see with most products, like the credit card system was for a very long time not actually part of traditional financial services. When you look at the internet, my father, I remember I was talking to him and he said, yeah, well, I remember a time where we didn't feel comfortable entering our credit card in a website. So it's inevitably going to merge. It's what I think we're doing.
I think to add on this point, it's if you look historically in terms of regulations and stuff, they tend to come in when something breaks. They don't come in first, right? Like they don't set the rules. Like something breaks, they're like, okay, we stop doing this, we stop doing that. So a lot of times that's how it works, right? You go about doing it, you do it in the best well-intentioned manner you try to do it. But something's gonna go wrong somewhere, right? So I think that's the space we're in right now, and that's the journey we're on right now, right? We try to do what's best, we try to do what's right. Regulators will always be involved in one point or another, but that's really how we're gonna see progression.
And what's the
I just want to add on. I think we've been seeing a lot of attention on crypto space from the hedge funds, the pension funds in the US, that kind of stuff, Franklin Templeton and all that. So I think everyone is also looking out in the space. I think there's also a part of a political reason behind it, but I think the real adoption will actually come in when all these I call them old money start flowing into crypto, and really that's where the real adoption begins.
And I fully agree on what you said before about the retail, and so for more corporate institutions, how you see things, especially in Asia, for example in Hong Kong or in Singapore, there are many funds, banks. Do you think that they will jump in DeFi as soon as possible?
I see two things. I think that, so I come from TradFi, and to be quite frank, like even if you look at ZK has been adopted. ZK has a world outside of crypto. Crypto has advanced the research in ZK and the development in ZK because of the money we put in. But if you look at ZK, 2014 was working with ING. Now they adopted ZK in call centers, so they didn't have the blockchain limitations. If you look at Web3 technology, like blockchain technology, that's already been like, there are private networks between banks, and like they did for settlement, they already use it. Now when it comes to DeFi adoption, like from my experience, that is going to take a very, very long time. I think that, Jing made a very good point. And sometimes when it breaks up, or when the cost of opportunity is that big and it's relatively safe, the risk management is relatively on the safe side, that's when you also see like a big jump in. That's what happened with a lot of credit cards in this business for insurance companies. So I think that generally speaking, what I'm seeing, even now with the people saying Hong Kong is opening up, and I am seeing it, it's still like what Rock said, we go at such a fast pace. When this is being said, take it with a grain of salt. It's like it's at their pace they're opening up. It's not at our pace.
And what's the biggest challenge that you need to face to accelerate the adoption of DeFi in Asia? It's more the UX, so we know that there are many things about chain abstraction, or maybe it's more about connection with traditional finance. What's the...
Well, my hot take is that it's going to take so again, coming from TradFi, whenever I've seen, let's say, technology being adopted, there was a champion inside that knew board members, that had consultants like BCG or McKinsey on their side, and then they would curate for tenders, and they would say these are the credible market players. Now this is a very interesting point, because from my conversations, like I used to work at Polygon, and from now, most big players have said, yeah, we're not touching the space yet because we don't see a clear winner. We don't see a clear winning solution. And so that's my personal experience for what I've heard and seen. So if I look at that whole process,
and we can understand this. I mean, it's not so crazy to think like that.
No, I agree. I agree, and I guess I disagree. I think that innovation is happening. The cost of the benefits and the cost opportunity is not that big enough yet for them to take the risk on this side in the crypto industry. But when it's gonna happen super fast. But I just don't think we're there yet. When people talk about Mika and people talk about other things, so I'm from Europe. I can tell you, the ECB, the European Central Bank, had a roadmap to have a euro stablecoin by 2022. It's not here yet.
I know.
So, it's
problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is controversial, but DeFi, there's still trusted actors in DeFi, right? Like I think that there's this ethos that we want in the crypto space of like things being fully decentralized, but it's very hard to get to like a fully decentralized place in the financial system, and you actually it's really just actors, right? And so I think that there's rot in the current financial system and in the actors within it that have like made things happen that are poor, but like there's still going to be actors within it. So I think DeFi has just been like this wave to like kind of further things forward and almost get like a new garden. But like I think DeFi almost is like the wrong word, I guess. For it, it's like a change of guard in the financial systems. It's kind of how I think about it.
I think, like, for example, in Singapore, you see like the banks are starting to do their digital. Doing a digital asset exchange, like quite a few years after all the centralized exchanges came up, and people are moving to Texas, and then the traditional finance starts to do. So we'll probably see like adoption of DeFi in the traditional finance sector probably like a few years from now. But right now, I guess they're just still learning more about the space, and this is actually where I think they will always want to know like what Rob mentioned earlier. Like what Raza mentioned earlier. They want to see a clear winner first on whether is DeFi the thing, or is it GameFi or whatever else that's out there. So I think they do it take a couple.
Okay, thank you, Jing. The final words for you.
Sure. I think I probably have a bit more controversial take compared to everyone else. You don't go to JP Morgan say DeFi, right? You go to JP Morgan say trust me. You go to Fidelity and it's trust me, right? So at the end of the day, do you think DeFi is going to go closer to their model, or their model going to come to DeFi? I think we all in our minds to a certain extent kind of know where it's going to end up, according to the spectrum. So I think how long that's going to take is not sure, but then it's really about that process, right? It's about how, like DeFi as it is right now, it's really a tiny segment of crypto. It's a tiny segment of blockchain. Is that going to be the only one that crypto is remembered for? I hope not. Right.
Thank you very much, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it, and big round of applause
Thank
for
you.
them. Thank you.